Hey, good morning. It's Black Friday already. Can you believe it? So check it out. I woke up this morning at 3:20 in the morning, very early, grabbed my Morning 5 planner. This guy right here, right? We grab it every single day. Morning 5 planner, write down our gratitude and our goals. Took care of that first thing this morning. Now, at the top of the page, there was a quote submitted by Jerry Reginald Robinson. Jerry Reginald Robinson, he's an actual member of our community. So the top of every page of the planner is a quote submitted by a member of the community, not necessarily their quote, but it's their favorite quote they submitted. So today's was Gerald Reginald Robinson, and the quote says, "Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. What are you going to do with yours?" And I think it's an absolutely perfect quote for the amazing guest that we have today. And I got to tell you, it hit me hard this morning. Last night, after the Turkey Day festivities, my oldest two kids, Savannah and Joel, they wanted to go see the Hunger Games. It was 9:30 at night. I knew I had a show early. So what did we do? Well, we went and saw the Hunger Games, man. We only live once. So we went and saw the Hunger Games, the new Hunger Games movie. Started at 9:30, 30 minutes of previews, 2-hour and 45-minute movie. Got home at 1 a.m. Slept for one full sleep cycle. Got up this morning, gratitude and goals, and I'm excited to be here with you today. And I will tell you this, that movie, The Hunger Games, the new one, it's phenomenal. Go see it. It was incredible. Best 2 hours and 45 minutes I'd had in a really long time. Now, listen, I like to sleep. I'm not telling you don't sleep. I like to sleep, but I love to live. And the guest that we've got today loves to live as well. And we're going to dive in here on hashtag Rise and Grind. Thanks for being here. Good morning and welcome to Rise and Grind Live. Unlock your full potential with the power of daily motivation, education, inspiration with your host, Glenn Lundy, a husband to one, father to 8, global motivational speaker, and the author of The Morning 5.
I'm Heather Parody, former therapist turned online entrepreneur and wannabe comedian.
Celebrity interviews, transformational information, and a massive community around the #1 morning show in the world. It's 5:30 a.m. and it's time to rise and grind. Hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you, my friend? How are you, my friend? Dude, today is Friday. Oh my goodness, Black Friday. That's right. Today is Friday, November 24th, 2023. And what's crazy is today is the very first and the very last time it will ever be Friday, November 24th, 2023. So I want to make sure we make the absolute most, and I do mean the absolute most, of this absolutely incredible day. Hey, it is Black Friday. I was just talking to my friend Patrick Abad at Toyota, Beaver Toyota in Georgia. He already had 7 customers in his showroom at 4:45 this morning on Black Friday. I'm like, this is insanity. I love it. There will be between $3.3 billion and $5 billion spent today on this particular holiday. And my hope is a couple of those dollars that you spend, you'll spend investing in your 2024. So make sure you get one of your Morning 5 planners today. Put that on your list. You can also pre-order the book. We've been talking about it here on the show, the Legacy Titles. You can pre-order that as well. Go to themorning5planner.com, themorning5planner.com. You can grab your planner, change the way you start your day, and it'll make a massive impact in your life. So order those today. And then, of course, if you would, if you're interested, if you'd love to learn some parables for success, then go ahead and pre-order the book. Now, speaking of books, there's this book called My Father's List that was written by this woman, this amazing woman named Laura Carney. And she has an incredible story. She's been all over the place. I mean, People Magazine has covered this story. Inside Edition has covered this story. It's an incredible story. I'm going to give you a little tiny clip of what this looks like, and then we're going to bring Miss Laura Carney right here to the show live today, November 24th, 2023. Glad you're here. Let's go.
What a cool thing it was that he had made this list. Like, how many people actually do something like that?
5 years later, Laura Carney completed her dad's bucket list.
I just collapsed in my husband's arms and hugged him. It was like, I'm done.
Talk with the president, correspond with the Pope, swim the width of a river are some of the 54 seemingly impossible tasks she set out to complete on behalf of her father, Mick Carney, who was killed by a distracted driver in 2003. He was 54 years old.
When I first started this project at that time, I thought the main reason I needed to do this was like for the purpose of awareness, that I was bringing awareness to how my father died. And I didn't realize that I actually had something inside of me that needed to heal, that there was grief that I hadn't really dealt with.
Laura and her brother found her dad's bucket list with several of 60 items already checked off, 13 years after his death, around the time of her wedding.
It was just the best possible wedding gift I could have ever asked for, really. And it just, I feel like I'm a totally different person than I was 5 years ago, honestly.
She set out on a mission to complete it by when he wanted to in 2020. But the pandemic caused a short delay, as one might expect. The bucket list took her all over the world. But the irony of all of it is that she finished the last task in her own home.
The last item I did was have 5 songs recorded, and my dad was a singer. So it seemed really appropriate that ended up being the last one.
Scariest item number.
Scariest. Drive a Corvette, for sure. I had a panic attack.
Tell me more about that, because driving a Corvette was the one that you didn't want to do because of your father.
It ended up being about 20 minutes from where he died, like that intersection. And I was very worried that I was going to somehow drive through it. I suddenly became very overwhelmed once I realized where I was. And, that really, I think, was post-traumatic stress.
Favorite bucket list item?
Favorite? Gosh, I think I have to say grow a watermelon.
The entire experience was eye-opening.
I think I'm just much more centered in who I am as a person, and I understand myself better, because a lot of these list items, like skydiving or surfing or, swimming the river, or one of them was go sailing by myself. It just required that I face these fears that I had of, just my own mortality. And once I actually did them, I realized a lot of the fears I was carrying were sort of just based on misconceptions about things.
Laura wrote a book about her journey. My Father's List will be published in July. I'm Lee Sheps for Inside Edition Digital.
So Laura, welcome to Rise and Grind. I've got to ask, there was 60 items on your dad's list, some of them meeting presidents, traveling the world, doing all of these things, and your favorite was growing a watermelon?
Yeah, that was my first interview when I was done, so that just popped into my head. I've developed better answers since then.
I was like, wow, okay, there's a lot to be said about that, right? The simplicity of nature and growth and life. Hey,
It was an important one, yeah. It was an important one, but I have some other favorites.
That's awesome. Laura, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you here with us on #Rise and Grind. What an amazing, amazing story. Your father, unfortunately, passes away in a very shocking and surprising way. Fast forward, you find he had a bucket list. Now, just so our audience knows, how many items on that bucket list had your father checked off?
He had checked off 5 when we found it, and there were 60 items on it. And we found out from my mom later that he wrote it when he was 29, shortly after I was born.
Wow. So he wrote it when he was 29. Fast forward, 20 plus years had gone by, and he had checked off 5 items on that list. So you guys decide, boom, we're going after it. We're gonna take this on. Your husband spurred you on, right? Was he was a part of that?
Yeah, I always like to say it was his idea because he was going to be the one who ended up being my main helper. So
Right.
it's good. And he knew it was a book from the beginning because he works in book publishing. So he knew.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So he knew this would make a good book as well as be great for you. And then you guys could create all of these experiences together. That's pretty phenomenal. Now, I know that you've done, some pretty cool things, like we talked about, meeting presidents and surfing and swimming rivers. Out of all of those things, I was curious as I was looking through your story. I was curious which one was like I know that the Corvette was challenging for the fears and of the accident, but which one would you say was the most emotionally impactful in your life?
Emotionally impactful, gosh. Well, other than the Corvette, I do want to, for the sake of your listeners, though, I do want to say that we always call it a car crash instead of an accident in the safe driving community, just because there was a person who was using a phone, so it's like there was a cause of it. So I just want to make sure I said that first. But
Mm,
yeah, like there are true accidents, but only like 5% of car crashes, like an act of God kind of thing. But I would say, other than the Corvette, probably visit Vienna. That was extremely emotionally impactful for me, just because I went there by myself. Like I went there for 2 whole weeks alone, and I didn't speak German. And you also had visit Berlin and Dresden, so I spent a week in Berlin and Dresden, and then I spent a week in Vienna, and I learned enough that I could communicate to find a bathroom or or go to restaurants. But yeah, that was really amazing because it was the first time I'd really been alone like that, I think since college,
mm,
and had that feeling of anything is possible that you have when you're 25 years old. And I think when my dad died when I was 25, even though I had moved to New York, I was getting started in a career in magazines, I had just met my future husband. He did actually get to meet my dad one time, and my dad died 5 days later. So
mm,
I think one of the things that happened when he died that summer was I lost my innocence and my optimism a little bit. And that it was like that for several years. So to have that experience where I'm alone in a foreign country and on this grand adventure and nobody needed anything from me, like I was in
right.
charge of my own time and I could go wherever I wanted. And it was like reclaiming this part of myself that I had forgotten existed. I think my dad would be so thrilled that I mean, I think he was thrilled. I think his spirit was very much there with me.
Yeah. Spirit was there with you. I love that. Talk to me a little bit more about the loss of innocence and optimism. I think that, we experience tragedies, all of us in different ways, and that really resonates with me when I look at my kids. Obviously, I have lots of kids, as you and I talked about earlier, and I want to preserve that for so long, right? I want them to have that innocence and that optimism, and I can remember moments in my life where that shifted for me. So, talk to me a little bit more about the loss of innocence and optimism and what that means, to you and how we shift that.
Yeah, I mean, based on the little that I know some of your story, and so I think that you would relate to that. And it's sort of like when the worst happens in that way, and you're very young, and you don't really know how to process it. I think it just makes you grow up overnight, and you just recognize you have this rude awakening, like, oh, life isn't what I thought it was. Like, there's a God, and God lets these terrible things happen.
Mhm.
And sometimes the way a person might cope with something like that is to just put on a shield of armor. For me, my armor was my career. It was in some ways my relationship. It was the fact that I had moved to New York. Like I would just obsessively tell people all the time, I live in New York now. Like, oh, isn't
Right.
she cool? Because I came from Delaware. Um, I remember feeling distinctly like almost angry that it had happened because I was just at the start of my life, just at the start of exploring what my life was going to be, and I didn't have the same energy anymore. I didn't have the drive that I might have had. A lot of people when they're 25 years old, they feel quite invincible. I remember, going out to bars with my friends in the Lower East Side, and they did some pretty stupid stuff because when you're that age, you just think anything's possible. But
No
if you're a
doubt.
person who knows, what'd you say?
I said, no doubt. Yes, I'm with you there.
Yeah, right, right. But if you're at that age, but you also know what, like, that a loved one could die violently, it's like you're a little more self-preserving. You're a little more, I mean, I became aware of my own death when I was 25 because of my dad. And I became very focused, like, okay, well, if that happens to me tomorrow, because it could, I want to be remembered. I want people to think, oh, she did something. So I got very, like, I guess the best way I can put it is achievement focused for probably about a decade. And I really pushed myself and didn't make a lot of new friends unless they were at my job, and I was really just trying to climb the ladder. And I think by the time my husband proposed, it was starting to hit me like something's missing in my life. And I didn't know what it was. I just knew I had some kind of hole inside of me. And I thought, well, is that the grief still? Is that still my fear of because I also became very phobic about my loved ones. I'd always make sure I told them how much I love them before they left, just in case.
Yeah.
And I think when the list arrived, it was because I had just made this huge commitment with planning our wedding and with actually walking down the aisle, because that's a really forward movement in life. And also I had just become an endurance runner. I ran the New York Marathon. I started noticing when I would train for races, I would just start crying. And I think it was all this pent up grief that was inside of me. And I mean, running is such a forward motion in itself. So one thing I think I was beginning to learn even before the list arrived, like fell in my lap essentially, was that our habits and the way we structure our days and structure our lives, it really does impact the choices that we make.
Our habits, how we structure our days, really impact the choices that we make. It's interesting that you talk about motion, right? And how that motion, like finding our purpose or seeking, anything, right? Joy, passion, whatever, is not we talked about this just yesterday, that like it's a verb. You have to be in motion. You can't just sit on the couch and expect these things to come to you, right? We recently went through the book, The Alchemist. Have you ever read the book, The Alchemist? Paulo Coelho.
I read it shortly after my dad died. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, we just broke it down, the last 4 episodes. So each week we do a theme on the show, and the last 4 episodes were all about that. But we talked about how he was in motion, right? Seeking his purpose, going to the next thing, working at the crystal shop, going through the desert. And while in motion, all of those things were able to manifest, right? Ultimately able to manifest his treasure, right? So I think it's really interesting.
You know what I love?
Talk to that.
You know what I love about that book? This is the thing that really helped me when I read that book the most. It was the line about when you go after your heart's desire, all the universe supports you. And then the part about the omens. Remember how I guess it's Coelho's the authors, right? He kept saying, look for the omens, and he would have like little stones he would have. And those two things really resonated with me. And I gradually started realizing after my dad died that I was starting to see this like repeated number pattern. I would see 88, 88 everywhere. And he died on August 8th. So I started thinking, like, am I going crazy? Like, why do I keep seeing 88 everywhere? And this is when I'm still in my 20s. And eventually I thought, okay, I get it, Dad, you're saying hi. So then it became like shorthand. It became a code. So I had that, plus, my dad was a singer. So if a song came on the radio and it was exactly one of his songs, like those would be my communication from him for many years. But then after we found the list, everything really like amplified, because the day that we found that list, I saw him in the back of my mind and he was smiling and nodding like, yes, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I would start to hear actually like 2 or 3 words from him when I was doing something that it was confusing at first, because I would think I wouldn't think something like that. I know that's not me. And then there were so many things that happened on the whole list journey, like with meeting the president, with owning a black tux. So many things happened that were synchronicities that I never could have made happen. I never could have. So the thing in the book where they say, when you go after your heart's desire, all the universe supports you, it's absolutely true. And I just started myself looking for things, like looking for, communication in nature. One of the things that started happening to me the day I started doing the list was I started seeing a heart every day. Like without fail, I would see a heart. And
Just
it doesn't
like on a
happen anymore.
sign
After I
or-
finished the book, it was done.
Wow. Like you would just see a heart like on a necklace or on a sign or somebody's earring
Anywhere.
or something like that.
Anywhere. On the sidewalk, a piece of gum on the sidewalk that's been there for 100 years. Now it
incredible.
looks like a heart shape. all
You're
the
giving me
time.
like little
It was
goosebumps
great
as you're
because
talking about this. I'm like getting all jacked up.
yeah. But the reason it helped me so much was because so much about going on this journey felt crazy to me, and it
Mm.
felt so unusual. Like my friends are like, investing in their first house, and meanwhile I'm like, I gotta figure out how to go skydiving. I gotta go take sailing lessons, and I would think, what am I doing? And anytime I was making these decisions that felt really out of left field and were purely an adventure, which is what my dad was about, I would see a heart, and then I would think, it's okay, Laura, you're still on the right path. They were like breadcrumbs.
Talk to me real quick, and I hope that this comes out the wrong way, and I don't mean any offense by this at all. You just said that my dad was an adventurer, like that was what he was all about. With that said, though, he had only tackled 5 items on the list, right? And at 50 plus years old. So I'm interested in that dynamic, because you say he was an adventurer, but it doesn't look like he had really tackled a lot of the things. He dreamed them, but he wasn't taking action on them, is what I'm just saying from the outside. Again, not trying to be offensive, but talk to me about that dynamic. Do you feel he was an adventurer, but wasn't living that out? Or do you feel he was living it out just he thought he had more time? Like, talk to me through that.
Well, I mean, my dad had a double life. So,
Okay.
like, part of why my parents divorced was he was a cross-dresser,
Okay.
and he performed in drag sometimes, and it was something that he had to hide from people,
Mm.
just because at that time it wasn't acceptable. And I never got to talk to him about it. I knew about it before he died, but it's a conversation we never got to have. But I think if you're a person who's living a double life, or, I don't think he had shame about it. Maybe when he was younger he did, because it was confusing. But sometimes when someone has their energy wrapped up in something, no matter what it is, it affects the way they live.
Mm.
It affects how much energy they have left over. And then, of course, also he was a dad, and that takes a lot out
Yeah.
of you. I honestly was amazed that he even had a list, like, oh
Sure.
crap, he was organized. And I have found other lists since then. It was like every time I was ready while doing this project, I would find another notebook he had, or another list of, he wrote a book himself in the 70s. So here I'm finding how incredibly organized he was at the age of 29 and in his 20s, and realizing like, oh, we're a lot alike. I never knew that, because when my dad died, I found myself hearing from people all the time how, I wasn't like him. I'm more like my mom. And as I'm finding these notebooks, I'm recognizing, oh no, the writer in me was like the writer in him, and that's why I needed to go on this journey, so that I could finally accept that part of myself. And, not that it compares in any way, but not feel like I was living a double life, because sometimes creatives, I think, can feel like that, because it's like you want to go after your creative urges, but you also sort of feel like it's not accepted by society. So I think that probably held him back in a lot of ways. But I think at the same time, I don't know, he used to joke about how he was an Aries. So he was a person who was great at starting things
Right.
and not the best at finishing them. I'm an Aries too, so we had that bond. So I mean, I even for a while there, like, I had a complex, like, what if I'm not good at finishing things, because
Mm.
I get super excited about novelty, but I'm not the person who's like, let's see this through. And then once I started doing this list, I started recognizing, oh wait, no, 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 like, I'm not like that. I'm actually awesome at seeing things through. Like, I was an endurance athlete. I finished a marathon,
Right.
like,
Right.
when my husband and I got married, we had been together for 13 years. So if that's not an endurance person, I don't know who is.
You have the ability to hang in there. You talked about you doing triathlons too, right? You've been doing some of those.
Yeah. I'm into commitment. I'm very into big endeavors. And I saw a video you shared the other day on Facebook about just taking things one step at a time. And I thought, yep, that's like, I shared it and I was like, this is how I do it. Because one thing I started realizing while I was doing this 54 item bucket list was, if I just took it one day at a time, I was going to get there. I was going to make it to my deadline. And then COVID happened, so I couldn't make my deadline. I had to extend it 2 years. but
Right.
that was
Right.
important too, right? Because I think if you're going after something and it's a big thing and you have to break it up into little parts like that, you also have to have grace with yourself that you might not get it done by that day you said, but that's okay, because you will get it done. And
And
it's about the journey. It's not about the outcome anyway.
it really is. And I totally align with that, right? It's about the journey. It's not necessarily about the outcome. There's so much that we can learn on the way. Tim Grover recently wrote a book called Winning. And Tim Grover was Kobe Bryant's coach, Michael Jordan, like he was their personal trainer, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, so on and so forth. And he talks about how like the winning part is like 1 or 2% of the experience, right? 98% of the experience is doing the work to get to that win, experiencing what it's like and stretching yourself to those past those boundaries. The win is just a very, very, very small piece of winning. It's actually those actions that you take every day. You mentioned COVID. I noticed in that video, I think that I recently was in Italy and I took my daughter to, we went to the Vatican and we went to and saw the Sistine Chapel. And while I was there, they told me I couldn't take any pictures or video, but I snuck like a little picture real quick. And I think I saw in that video, I think I saw you sneaking a little video of the Sistine Chapel there.
That was okay. That was allowed. I was in Vienna.
Oh, okay. All right. You were a video. So you were allowed. Along the way, though, I am curious, as you were doing all of these things, were there any challenges that like any boundaries that you had to maybe bend a little bit, rules that you had to bend a little bit to be able to make some of these things happen along the way? Like, was there ever a point where you were right there, door was closed, you had to sneak around the back, anything like that?
Oh gosh, I wish. I mean, I think it's probably true that I took poetic license on a couple of them, because
Right.
I'm writing a book about this experience too. And one of the interesting things I noticed that was starting to happen was I had to I mean, I was a perfectionist, my career is as a copy editor, which means I fix people's spelling all the time. So I was a little bit of a controlled person and I had to just let go of that control with every single one of these items. And the joy, it was in the journey, like you said, and in the lessons I was getting. And it was in that letting go, that surrendering. And I mean, that's what my dad used to try to get me to do all the time when I was a kid. So I often started realizing, oh, this is just him teaching me stuff and like reminding me how to live. So things would happen with list items where I just thought, well, this isn't how I thought this would go. Like one of the best examples of that, I think, is a tennis list item. I thought I was going to get it done in one day. And I played tennis in high school. So I thought of all the sport items, this is the one that's going to be the easiest for me. I went out there, kind of aggro on the tennis court. And my friend lobbed it over the net and I leapt for it. And then I just landed on my foot really hard and I tore a tendon in my foot.
Mm.
And then later that year I had to get surgery, ended up on the couch for 2 months, was very much like, oh my God, why did I do this project? This was the dumbest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, sure.
Like, what
Doubt
if I
kicks
can never
in.
run again,
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said, yeah, like doubt kicks in at that point, right?
Oh man, it was like my belly of the whale moment. It was bad. I remember, and I said, like, I yelled out loud, give me a sign. Why am I doing this? I was running out of money. I had lost my job. My husband was just bringing me oatmeal every day. It was bad. And at that very moment, actually, no, not that moment, but like an hour later, I got a message on Facebook from my uncle, my dad's brother, who I didn't talk to very often. And he's like, oh, your dad's old roommate just messaged me. He was cleaning out his house and he found this sports and leisure newsletter your dad created in 1978. And he used to send it around to all of us. And it's just like, he tried to make a club that was like giving people discounts on going to see sports, and of course he was a businessman. So he also made it about that. Like he was giving little like coupons in the letter about here's how you can get a martini for like half off because he was a liquor distributor.
Right.
And then there's like a whole page of it that was like, so-and-so just got a job and this person's having a baby. And the roommate I'd never met was like, oh, it's like Facebook. He was so ahead of his time. And I read this letter. He sent it to me in the mail. And the first page of it was like an editor's letter. And it said, the point of this is having fun. And that was what really got me because I thought, oh my God, yeah, everything in my life is changing and I'm afraid. And that's why I'm in this really low point. And it's all because of this one stupid list item. Like, and I was so arrogant thinking I was going to do tennis in one day. And that was when I learned, look, it's okay that if there's lots changing around you, as long as you're having fun. And I thought, well, I'm having a blast. This is the best year of my life. This is the best 2 years. I was in year 2. So I just started shifting my priorities basically. And I started letting myself live. I started letting myself, as long as I was learning something, then I was okay. I think sometimes people might get started with something and they start to get afraid. They start to doubt themselves and they can't see it through because they're afraid, well, what's going to happen? How will my life change if I really commit to this thing? And I'm at a point now where, I have a book out there in the world. I've been on CBS Sunday Morning. I've been on NBC Nightly News. I have lots of exciting things going on. I just toured the whole country. My life is changing quite a bit right now, but I developed a comfort level with it. Like I know that we're supposed to change. I mean, like look at the plants, right? Like I grew a watermelon, I planted an apple tree. Their whole lives, all they do is grow and change, right? How are we different?
We are not. We are not different.
Yeah.
You are speaking my language right now. I love this. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are watching here today, if you love this as well, if you haven't done so already, I need you to tag some friends, hit the share button, all those things that we need to do. I need more people to know Miss Laura. I think she's amazing. I also need you to go grab a copy of her book, My Father's List, How Living My Dad's Dreams Set Me Free. You need to go grab a copy of that. And of course, you can do that at buylauracarney.com, buylauracarney.com. Make sure you grab a copy. And more importantly, I really need all of you to connect with Laura, send her messages today, encourage her, lift her up, let her know that we appreciate her waking up at the earliest of hours to join us right here on this crazy show, #Rise and Grind. All right, I need you guys to do that for me. Now, Laura, if you have time, a couple more questions, if you don't mind. How are we doing on time for you?
I have all the time you need.
That's very kind of you. I really, really appreciate that. So the list, I'm curious, you completed the items on your father's list. Obviously wrote the book about it. It's changed your life. Do you have a list? Have you created a list?
Oh yeah. Yeah, mine's really long. Mine's like 120 items and I've checked off about 20 now.
So what is the maybe scariest or seemingly most challenging item on your current list?
Oh gosh. I mean, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do some of these things.
Like which one?
One
like
is I'd like to hike the entire.
You're not.
I'd like to hike the entire
after
Appalachian
everything
Trail.
you just accomplished.
Oh no, but that's the thing. It's okay. It's okay if I don't, because the thing that's so valuable about my dad's list to me is it's not so much that it had to be done or he had to finish it, but that he thought to make it. I mean, like I said, he was great at starting things, right? And some people can't even get to that point. And if you can make the commitment of actually writing down on paper, I know you're big about this, right? Writing on paper what your goals are, because it really wasn't a bucket list for my dad. It was his goals in life. It was 1978. Nobody knew about the term bucket list yet.
Right. Sure.
If you can make the commitment just to do that, you change the energy of how you're living completely. So I feel, because I wrote down, right? Like I wrote down these 120 items. Now I'm committing to having fun in my life and I'm committing to going after these things and going to change the way I live now completely. And I think with my dad, I mean, the thing that's really magical about it is it made his daughter inspired to do it, and I found it after 13 years after he died, right after I got married. Like that timing is not coincidental. I was ready to go after my marriage in a way that was unique to us and that was going to shape us and help us. So even though he's dead, his spirit's still here guiding us, and what he stood for still matters. And I think that that's important. I think that's what these lists are really about. So I might not get to run in the Himalayas someday, but at the very least, someone's going to know that I wanted to. And I think it's when you write down your dreams, you're going to inspire other people to want to do it. What?
Oh my gosh. I might not get to run in the Himalayas, but at least someone's going to know that I wanted to. That's huge.
Like expand your horizons. Like that's the thing that was the greatest gift for me. There were two gifts that were the greatest. One was I learned while doing the list, as long as I went after something with kindness and humility, it was going to get done. Like the tennis thing, I was total arrogance that day. No way I was going to finish it like that. I ended up finishing that one 2 years later with my husband, playing tennis every weekend, which is how my dad would have liked it anyway. The other thing I learned was that you just have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you're here on this earth for a reason, and your life is a gift. This isn't something like a sentence someone has given you and a punishment, and you just have to struggle through it and just make it and live through every day. Even if your life is unbearably hard, you can still find little moments of joy every day, and approach it with gratitude, approach it with thank you. Like, my life is a gift, so I want to use it the best of my ability to, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to be I'm giving to other people every second of the day. I have to include giving to myself too, and getting to enjoy myself and enjoy my endeavors. That's being alive too. That matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Leading out with gratitude for all the situations. And I like how you speak to the way you paint pictures is awesome, by the way. I love the way
Thank you.
I love the way you speak. I can obviously, that makes you're obviously a great writer because you have the ability to really
Thank you.
and use words in a phenomenal way. But as you paint that picture, I immediately saw, for me, just forget the audience, just me and you having a chat right here. For me, I just immediately flash back to previous life, right? Pre 30s, where it did feel like everything was a grind and I was in a prison and it was going to be miserable. Like, that's all I could see my existence looking like, right? To the point of depression, suicidal thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you talk about that, I know that there are some people that are walking in that, right? That are experiencing that. And so when you say those words, it's refreshing, it's freeing. It's like, dude, this does not have to be a prison sentence. Life does not have to suck, right? Like, it can be fun.
Yeah.
And it starts with imagining it as such, right? Taking the time to say, hey, maybe I'll do this one day. Maybe I'll do this one day, without the pressure. I'm assuming there's no pressure on you on this 120 list based on what you just shared, right? It's not pressure.
No, I mean, I'm approaching it the same way as I did with my dad's, and the difference is just mindset. Because before, I think I was almost like a little kid in adult clothing, because I think a lot of people live like that. Like, I just got to prove that I'm worthy of being here. And I just want someone to notice me. I want someone to love me. I think a lot of people live that way. So their choices in life are just trying to show off to some invisible force up in the sky. I don't know who it is, but just trying to prove something. And, also, I was diagnosed with depression when I was a teenager, and I had a little bit of a rough go of it for a little while. And that's what happens when you're a teenager and that happens to you. So I had come up with a self-identity that was someone who was limited by that. So to finally have this experience where I'm not making choices anymore because I'm trying to prove anything. I'm making choices just out of love for someone. Just like I started to feel, because I love my dad, I'm not going to fail. Something's going to jump in. Providence will help me. I'll figure it out. And then now I'm able to expand that and apply it to my whole life. Like, I'm co-creating my life with something bigger than me. For me, that's God.
Mm-hmm.
And God wants me to pursue my gifts and wants me to figure out how to use them to help people, not to compete with other people, not to try to seem better than anyone, but rather use them to the best of my ability. And that's my prayer always, is just use me. And when you start living like that and you're starting to be guided by love, you do start to feel more grateful. You do start every day feeling like, man, it's another day I get to be alive. And that's certainly something my dad couldn't say after the age of 54. So even thinking that every day and living my life that way, that's my way of honoring him too.
So incredible. Not competing, right? Not competing, not the pressure of competition, but ultimately coexisting with this higher thing and experiencing life and allowing, to me, God, same as you, allowing God to experience himself through us, through our
But there's a lot of letting go, though, Glenn. You have to let go of a lot if you live like that, and that's the thing I think people have have a hard time with. You have to be willing to say, God's choices are better than mine. You know, like I believe this doesn't look like something I would choose to do, but there must be a lesson. There must be some reason this is happening right now, you know, and that's letting go. And that's how you get to where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, you know, I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about those thoughts that you're like, this is not from me. It can't be from me. I was actually sitting in church on a Sunday, and I'm the rise and grind guy, the 5:30 a.m. guy, the go get it guy, the build your business, the work, the no sleep guy, right? I'm all these things. And I'm in church, and the sermon has nothing to do with this. And all of a sudden I hear like, I want you to shut down your company 7 weeks a year and pay all your people. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Right. And then it just kind of stuck with me. And so I went home and I wrote down, like, is it even possible first for me to shut down my company 7 weeks a year? And then what would be the benefits to all of my employees, right? The benefits would be they could vacation together. They could actually take time off and spend it with their family and not feel guilt or shame for taking time off. All these things, right? I made this list of positives, and then obviously made a list of negatives. And then I did something after that, Laura. I said, I went online, I went on Google, and I typed companies that have 7 Sabbath weeks, right? Companies that are shut down 7 weeks a year. And there were 0, exactly 0. And when I saw there was 0, then it was like, oh, wow, this could be great for recruiting people, right? You start off with 7 weeks of paid vacation, right? This could be great for recruiting. This could be great for showing the values of my business, so on and so forth, right? So I'm like, very next day, I called the company in. I called all my team in, and I'm like, here we go. I don't know what this looks like or how we're going to do it, but we're going to shut down every 7th week. And now it's been like 18 months or so that we've been running this way. And it's been so incredibly impactful on our business, on our people. It's so incredibly fulfilling. So I'm with you, like letting go of some of that stuff. And I want to circle back around, and then we're going to close this down. I want to circle back around real quick. You mentioned earlier living a double life and how we have to really step into our authentic us, right? And allow ourselves, like when we're living a double life, we can't go out and really live, right? Because we're keeping a piece of that. Talk to me a little bit more about that. I think that a double life doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't have to be anything extreme, right? It could be that we're one person maybe when we're at work, and we're another person when we're at home. Examine that a little bit for me, if you don't mind. Expand on that just a little bit, how important it is for us to not live this double life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as extreme as what I think my dad might have gone through, and I'm never going to speak to what that's like, because I mean, I'm in a support group for that to understand it better. I have a lot of friends now who have that experience, but I think the notion of having a double life is something people can relate to in general, just because, you know, we're living in this like social media age where we're all just showing our pictures and our accomplishments all the time online. It's weird, right? It's like show and tell, but for adults. And I think this thing can happen where it's like I was talking about before. I used to live to compete with people, thinking that I was supposed to prove myself to the world, like that, okay, I deserve to be here. And not recognizing, oh no, God loves me for who I am. Like just the fact that I exist means I deserve God's love, and I can choose to do whatever I want with my life. So I think for me, I got to a point with the list where I no longer had time to just try to show a good face to other people. You know, I just had to be myself in order to get this stuff done. I mean, at one time I joked to a friend who's like, oh, aren't you afraid of this, that, or the other thing? And I was like, I don't have time for fear anymore, dude. Like, I just got to get this stuff done. And I think I just started to become wildly authentic because I had to be. And when you start to lean into that, into just always being the same person, no matter what you're doing, you're just a lot more efficient. you start to experience things always as a single life, as that one person, instead of the two different versions of you. So it's good from a practical standpoint, but also, if there's something you're trying to spread to other people and you're trying to talk about a cool thing that you're doing, it's good for that too. I mean, like, one perfect example is when I first started the list, I was still working full time at a woman's magazine, and I wouldn't talk about it. I would be afraid, like, what are they going to think of this crazy thing I'm doing? It doesn't seem like my regular job. I would make sure I would hide it. And then someone at the magazine published an article I wrote about it, and then after I left that job and I started freelancing, I never was lacking for work. That was the thing that was so crazy to me. It just came to my doorstep. I mean, I have like 11 different jobs right now as a freelancer,
Right.
and I have not had to look for work once in the past 5 years. So to me, that says I was meant to do this. And
Mhm.
anytime I would go to those new companies, I would talk about the list. I would talk about the book. I was freely talking about my project because, hey, this is who I am right now. It might seem weird to you, but it's still who I am. And that started changing the way I worked and the way I lived and the way I related to other people. And hey, if I'm in People Magazine right now because I got a job at People Magazine and they let me write that essay, like, it actually ended up helping promoting my book, that
Mhm.
I was willing to be open, authentic at these new jobs I was going to. So it's like, you could be a person who's like, oh my God, I lost my full-time job. What am I going to do? Now I'm a loser because, like, I don't have this steady employment and I don't know where my next paycheck's coming from. You could look at it that way,
Yeah.
right? Or you could look at it like, no, man, I'm winning. I'm diversifying. Like, I have like 11 different freelance jobs and 11 different offices I go to, and I'm spreading a message already that's going to come in handy for me in 3 years. It's all mindset.
You go, Laura. You go. That's what I'm talking about. I'm winning. I'm winning. That's what I'm talking
I mean,
about.
just you have to bring you everywhere you go. Like, you're
That's
your
right.
product. You have to bring you.
You have become my new best friend. Sorry, I know Heather's watching, and Antoinette's here, and Tarika, and Young Johnson, and Kim, and Ramon, and all you guys. I love you guys. Scott Simons, thanks for hanging with me. But dude, Laura just stepped in as my new best friend this morning. Her and I are jamming. This is amazing. Hey, we have time. I'm gonna do one last thing, if that's okay. I'm gonna put you on top of a mountain. All right. You're on top of a mountain. And just want you to imagine for a second, you're at the top of the mountain and all of humanity is at the base of this mountain. Okay. 7.8 billion people. And they're cheering, right? They're going, Laura, 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 Laura. They're cheering for you. And somebody, I don't know who, somebody comes over and they hand you a microphone. And they say, Laura, you have 2 minutes. 2 minutes to breathe life into these people. 2 minutes to tell them something that they absolutely need to know that could impact their life in a positive way. What would you tell them?
I've put some thought into this. I watch your show. I know you ask people this. The first thing that comes to my mind when I hear of a scenario like that is Sermon on the Mount, right? So I would say what Jesus said. That's not me saying I'm like Jesus, but I would say what he said, which was love one another. That's what matters. That beats every other piece of advice, because you could get into all kinds of scenarios in life where you think you're right about something and then someone else also thinks they're right about it, and you can't meet in the middle. You can't resolve it because you just both think that you're right, and you're both probably kind of wrong about one part of it or another. And love always matters more than being right. And you learn. That's how you learn. And I could have lived my whole life thinking, oh, my dad was someone who didn't finish things and he died early. So tragic. And in the beginning of this this program, you said unfortunately he died, and I don't even think of it as unfortunately anymore, because that's how much I flipped the story. I mean, in some ways someone could say my dad's death was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it gave me the nudge I needed to become the daughter he knew me to be.
Yeah.
So that to me is the power of love. Like, that's what I'd say. Life is about the power of love, not the love of power.
The power of love, not the love of power. Mic drop. Love one another. Oh my goodness. You got my eyes like watered up because that was absolutely beautiful. It hits me. I lost my dad 17, 18 years ago, I guess it was. And I always say, like, unfortunately, but it was a game changer for me in a positive way. I just wish sometimes that my kids would have got to know him, you know, and so I guess maybe that's where that comes from. But that hits me when you speak it like that, right? Flip the script so much because that was a powerful moment for me as well. And then you made me think of one of my favorite newer books, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, where he talks about it's not about right or wrong. It's do you understand, right? Just seeking to understand. We don't have to, we don't, and love one another in that process. Laura, you're amazing. You are incredible. This has been so much fun. Ladies and gentlemen, go grab the book, connect with her on social, blow her up today. Make sure she feels all of the energy that is hashtag Rise and Grind, this amazing community. Laura, thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been awesome.
Thank you. I was so honored to be here. And hey, look at the cover of my book. I'm on a mountain.
That's right there on the mountaintop, right there on the mountaintop. Well, beautiful. Thank you again for having us. Hang tight for just a second. I'm going to say goodbye to all these other ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. 11/24/2023. Mark this day in history. We're going to get out of here. I'm going to let you get on with your morning. I know we have gotten a lot of opportunities to spend time together. I hope that you found today as valuable as I did. You're amazing. I love you. Have an incredible weekend. Don't go out and blow all your money on silly stuff unless it's just, really what brings you joy. But ultimately be intentional, be with the ones that you love, and go out there and make an impact. We'll see you on Monday, 5:30 a.m. We're going to do this all over again on hashtag Rise and Grind. We're going to play a little music out. And I'll see you guys on the flip. Make sure you get your planners. Don't forget.